Hello everyone, welcome to Proctors. I'm Kevin Mason, I'm the Strategy Director at our agency here. So I'm going to do the first half of this talk, and then Phil, our Creative Director, is going to talk more creatively about the subject. But before we start, I just wanted to say thank you for turning up and giving us your time. I think that's brilliant. And also, we are live streaming this, so hello internet if there's anyone out there. And just to check that we're all in the right place, I presume that all of us in this room are in some way involved in selling products or services to businesses, whether you're working in a business that does that or providing services to businesses that do that. We're all in the right place. B2B, very good. Okay, so we're all selling to these kind of people. Depending on the product, there may be a committee of professional buyers, or it may be just procurement, you know, if you're selling widgets. But these are the people we're talking to. And there's a kind of little secret about this that we all kind of hide behind the surface, because these people pride themselves on being professional buyers, right? They do this for a profession, and they're making decisions on behalf of their business. And we sell to them. And so we all presume that the decisions that they make are very rational decisions. They're based on very reasoned thinking. And there's a whole long process that they go through to understand how this particular bit of what you're offering is better than that, and what value it's going to add to the business. So they're rational decisions, right? But psychologists who've done a lot of research into the psychology of buying with consumers, very recently, in the last 5-6 years, have applied that thinking to B2B marketing and advertising and decision making. And they come up with some very interesting insights that just because we happen to have a suit on and we're in business, we're still human beings, and there are some fundamentals that apply to everyone. And the first is that behind our decision-making process, there's all kinds of fears and emotions and drivers. And in business, these are amplified because the decision is very, very critical. You're spending a lot of money, so these things get heightened. So behind the decision-making, there's all these kind of fears and worries of, is our decision going to affect our business reputation? And at a personal level, if I make the wrong decision, is that going to affect my professional reputation? So the first bit of research revealed that B2B decision makers actually tend to make quick, intuitive decisions, and then they use rational facts to back up the decision. We all do that. We all do that in all kinds of areas in our life. It's a human thing, and it applies to business decisions as well. Google and the Marketing Leadership Council at Google, they did some research, very recent research. And what they did was they looked at the research done into B2C brands, and they applied the same research to B2B. And they found that of the hundreds of B2C brands studied, people had emotional connections between 10% and 40%, but it was actually higher in B2B brands. And I'm not talking about crying emotions, you know, there are all sorts of emotions, but there is a connection which is more fundamental than just my logical thinking. That's kind of interesting. And they're almost 50% more likely to buy a product when they see personal value, an opportunity for career advancement, or confidence and pride in their choice. These are not things which, when we're creating marketing to appeal to these people, we typically bear in mind. B2B brands, as opposed to direct marketing, they de-risk the decision making. What does that mean? Well, it means, let's think about an everyday decision. You're given a shopping list to go down to a supermarket, and you've got to buy some fizzy drinks. Do you buy Panda Cola? Do you buy Pepsi, or do you buy Coke? Well, you know that the safest option is going to be Coke. It de-risks the decision. That's all that it's doing. And so if we know that these people are making irrational decisions first and then using the rational stuff to back it up, brand becomes important in that mix. And typically, I don't know what it's like for you, but the focus tends to be on short-term investment in business-to-business marketing. It's all about generate leads for sales. That's it. So it's all tactical, rational stuff. You're in market, right? Let's appeal to your rational side of thinking. And typically B2B leaders have thought, well, brands for consumer marketing, it doesn't apply to us. But it really does. It really does. And this research is beginning to create a shift in the thinking in business-to-business marketing. Most importantly, a strong brand keeps you top of mind when sales aren't in the room. And we'll take a look at what's happened in decision-making cycles in a minute, but that's really important. So that cycle, what we call moments of truth. So it starts at the beginning, the purchase journey. Over 60% of B2B journeys now are conducted online before they talk to anybody. And when people are searching for stuff, and business buyers as well, they tend to search for and engage with brands they know, rather than just searching for, I need this. They'll have a list of brands in their head and they'll start searching for them to put onto their pitch list. So brand awareness is key to making it onto their search list. If you haven't heard of you, why are they going to put you on your search list? We know this is an agency. We don't get onto the pitch list of stuff that the big London agencies and the big brands get to go to, because there's a pick list for that. It's basic stuff, really. Then right at the end of the cycle, here's this buying group committee. Right at the end of the purchase journey, they number between 6 and 10 now, and they each bring on average 4 pieces of content into that stage of the process. That's Gardner found that. Now, most importantly, not all of that committee are domain specialists in what you sell. They don't know what makes a good laptop or a good piece of IT equipment. The CEO doesn't, the CFO doesn't, the operations director doesn't know. So brand salience is a wanky marketing term, but all it is a memorable point of distinction you're known for. That's going to steer that group's decision-making process, especially if all of them around the table tend to make kind of irrational choices and then use all the facts to back up their choice. They're going to have something in their head, a preference already. So I'm going to use laptops as an example because it's easy, right? There are 7 laptops on a table. They all look the same. They've all got components inside which are probably made in China. They've all got processors, they've got motherboards, they've got a screen, all of that stuff. You don't know what's inside. How do you make a choice about which one to choose? If they've got a logo on it, you might then start thinking, okay, well, that's a Dell, that's a value brand, that's going to be cheap. IBM is going to be reliable. Apple, different, that's for the creatives. HP, innovative. Samsung, maybe stylish, comes to mind. Why do those things come to mind? Because those logos in themselves don't mean anything. They don't stand for anything. They stand for something because of the marketing that's gone behind it. And the way that those logos have been imbued with that is through very consistent storytelling. So there's a classic example, IBM. How do you know it's reliable? Because that message, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, went over and over and over again. It's really memorable, and it taps into that, I don't want to make the wrong decision. It's based on psychology. So that's nothing to do with a direct response piece of marketing or your thought leadership, or the speeds and feeds, how effective this is, what value we add, or anything. It's just an emotional thing which is just primed into people. That's only half the point, because if you get the message right, that's great. If you get the brand and what it stands for, great. But if no one hears about it, you're not going to have any effect. And this comes to the nub of the issue for B2B marketeers in general. If they're very focused on the 3-month cycle of get me sales leads, then they're joining the cohort of other B2B companies who are all fishing in the same pond, because actually there's only about 5% of that buying audience is in market at any one point. So if you're all just fishing in the pond to pull them out, it's very competitive. So direct response marketing, that's designed to generate sales leads, but brand campaigns prime the remaining 95% of the buying audience so that when they're top of mind, when they enter the market, so then they're searching for you, and then the buying committee have heard of you. That's the point about B2B brand. The other thing is the researchers, Binet and Field, who've done a shed load of research on B2C brand, they've very recently applied the same research to B2B brands, and the same principles apply exactly. So they found that investment in brand building gives a larger lasting effect than the short-term direct response stuff. So you get long-term prospects down to the immediate prospects, and the brand building versus direct response. The effects are much more longer lasting and better, bigger. But it takes time. And the number of times that we've had clients where they've said, the brief is, we want to build brand awareness. We've got this amount of money, and we want to run this campaign over 3 months. End of month 1, they say, how are we doing? Oh, it's not working. They pull the budget. Brand takes at least 6 months to show any tangible results at all. And that's when it starts building. It takes about a year, 2 years for it to build really lasting results. So be really clear if you're thinking about brand and you're talking to people about brand internally, to manage those expectations, because they're two very, very different things. Lead gen is immediate. You see immediate results, but the results then don't last in people's memories. They don't remember it. Brand is all about building a future memory. Direct response is about harvesting someone who's already looking for something, and you're just tapping into that. So the building blocks of a brand. This is a very simple diagram, and actually getting there is not easy, and it's not simple. One of my favourite Churchill quotes is, I haven't got time to send you a short letter, so here's a long one instead. There's a long process to get here, but fundamentally there are 3 building blocks. Meaning, what you stand for, we talked about that. Difference, so your position in the market. What's that meaning and how is it different to other people? And fortunately in B2B, if you develop a really strong brand, the number of your competitors who are still just talking about products and just lining up to be shot down on price, you're actually going to have an advantage anyway. You're going to be different to them by default. And then customer motivation, so the perception. So your meaning, what you stand for, has to connect in some way to what's important to your customers. So that IBM example, connecting what you do, which is reliable kit, to someone who needs reliable kit because they don't want to get fired for making the wrong decision. That's the kind of thing. So summary, strong brand, it can keep you top of mind when sales aren't in the room, de-risk the buyer's decisions, and importantly, it can protect price points and margin, which direct response does not do. It lines you up for a price conversation if you don't have that strong brand to support it. It creates an emotional trigger in the buying committee's mind, especially for people who know nothing about what they're buying, which is quite a few of those people in that committee. And it's a signpost towards then the rational justification for the buying decision. I think we should go for Dell because they're cheap. Okay, CTO tell me about how good this technology is. I know nothing about it. Okay, let's make the rational decision. And it creates long-lasting effects as opposed to the short-lasting effects, of direct response. But to be strong, the brand needs compelling, memorable meaning at its heart. So it elevates you from what you do to why what you do matters. It's consistent, it's really single-minded narrative told over and over and over again. And it takes investment over time. So what we're not saying is that brand is in some way better than direct response. The two have to go hand in hand. One doesn't negate the other. And typically, to get the kind of balance between the two, the budget split across the board is about 60-40, 60 brand, 40 direct response. Which is, if you're working in an organization which doesn't, the senior people go, brands, what's this about? We just need sales. It's a difficult sell. This kind of data is beginning to help that sell, but if there is hope even for the most desperate case. Jeff Bezos, when he first set up Amazon, thought that advertising was a tax on poor products. That's what he saw advertising is. Now he's the biggest advertiser in the world. So, it just takes time to get there, but we will get there. So I'm just going to very quickly, before I hand over to Phil, nip through a case study. I've chosen Cornish Mutual, a client of ours, because we work with lots of big brands, Panasonic globally, but this is a much smaller brand. They're an insurance provider, mutual insurance provider, about 30 million turnover, down in the southwest. And their competitor is NFU Mutual, both mutuals. They both do farm, personal and business insurance, and they both offer great service. Difference is, NFU Mutual is national. They've got hugely deep pockets. They've invested in consumer advertising, in the prime spots, and they're cheaper due to their scale. Because Cornish Mutual only operate in the southwest, and they're more expensive due to their scale. So the challenge is, how do you survive, let alone grow, Cornish Mutual in competition with that gorilla over there? So when we started working with them, this is in 2019, we had a big discovery phase, and we put our wellies on, went out, talked to farmers. And that's where we saw the chink of an opportunity. Because a couple of quotes here, you're local, part of the community. That plays in your favour. Traditional, we like that. You stuck to your roots, unlike NFU. Okay. So that led us to, through lots of sessions with the board, dialing down on the niche. So we moved from this, Cornish Mutual insurance that keeps its word, that service proposition, an insurance company that's refreshingly different, that means nothing, to Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts, working to protect the farming community. Really, really in your face, we're for you. We know our roots, we're sticking to them. So that was the first step. Dial down on the niche, reposition yourself. Since then, 2019, this is where we started, rural insurer. We've been through a number of phases. So we moved to farming insurer. Then we started thinking about a move to prevention, out from the base of insurance, which is protection. So diversifying some of the business model. In 2022, this is where it came to its fulfillment, but we've been thinking about it a lot, is there are some existential threats happening to UK farming. There's climate change, there's changing consumer attitudes, and the abolition of EU subsidies. These are existential threats to a lot of farmers, and by association to Cornish Mutual. If these people go under, we've got no one to insure. So it changed the thinking from, well, we're farming insurance product focused, but focused on a niche, to, okay, why are we here? What's our meaning? What's our purpose? And it moved to resilience. So we move from being a rural insurer to protecting the future of farming. That's our mission, that's our vision, that's why we're here, which has led to a huge shift in thinking from insurances are one thing to what else can we offer the community to overcome these existential threats. We're part of a community, we're a mutual. You would think, a lot of people think of brand as kind of creative, fluffy stuff. That's not just marketing, that's business strategy with brand at its core, which is really interesting. And it shifted the thinking of the board. We had one session where we said, okay, in 10, 20 years' time, if the climate change has created a situation where reinsurance is so expensive, insurance is not a thing anymore, what else do we offer? What does this brand stand for? What can we offer the community? It was that fundamental. So you can see this is their event tent at the Cornish agricultural show. You can see that their narrative has moved from talking about insurance to things like building a resilient farm. Starts from the ground up. They're now offering agronomy consultancy, soil health, health and safety, and then agritech. So things like sensors to put in your hay bales, because once a hay bale gets to a certain temperature, it can self-ignite, that kind of stuff. So just expanding from that one exercise of, rather than thinking we're an insurance provider, why are we here, has expanded the footprint of the brand and services that it offers, which is great. And this is anecdotal feedback from the sales force, that they're lovely old companies, so they still have salespeople going visiting farms. You've got our backs, which is a shift from, I pay for insurance, it's a pain in the arse, I resent paying it, to actually, no, this brand has got our backs. But commercially, has it had any impact? And this is the interesting bit, because over that period of time, the marketing budget hasn't changed. We've redirected some of it, rebalanced it, tried some different techniques, but the budget hasn't changed. They've got no new salespeople, but 21 to 22, their new policies increased by 24%, and their written, the value of that has increased by 34%. So what's interesting to me is marketing can't claim all of that, obviously, there are other factors. But with no increasing marketing spend, so the message hasn't got out there anymore, and there's been no extra salespeople, that shift in the brand has a fairly large contributing factor. I'm going to finish off and hand over to Phil just with this quote. This has come out today. This is Interbrand's report on the best global brands. And this is the quote from them. It says, "Today, the world's most successful companies start not with a product, but with brand as their critical growth asset and engine. The brand is a vehicle through which the business is able to address a range of different customer needs or jobs to be done through an extended portfolio of differentiated products and services. These companies leverage the utility in their brand to drive exponential growth." And we've experienced it ourselves, as I said, with the case study and the data coming back from the research that's going on into B2B buying and behaviour also backs that up.
Hello everyone. So as Kev said, I'm Phil Robinson. I'm Creative Director here at Procter & Stevenson. And I've called this talk Taking Control, but I could have called it any number of things really. What I want to do is just look at what makes a brand work, and then pick up on some of the things like the brand essence, the brand salience that Kev talked about earlier, and then really try and do what the title slide of today said, and that's sort of how do we match brand marketing back to lead generation? How does it sort of become a seamless connection? So it seems strange to start this talk here, but I'm going to start with the question, what is a brand? Very strange halfway through the event, but we could discuss it and debate it for hours, months. If you just look on Google, you'll see there's decades of work gone into this and very little agreement actually. But for the purposes of what I'm going to talk about today, one definition becomes partially helpful. And again, it was Jeff Bezos who said it, and that's this. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And following everything that Kevin said, it's certainly useful to bear that definition in mind. It's something we could keep in mind as we talk about brands. And knowing that other people lead the narrative about your brand when you're not present is a really strong justification for significant marketing spend in your brand. And because, but the things have changed. In the past, brands had it a little bit better, effectively, than we do now, because they had far more control over the context and circumstances in which people engage with them. So it could be a brochure, it could be an advert, it could be on television or radio, it could be in person in a store, for example. But the range of options was more limited, and the brand was almost sacrosanct. It could tell people what it was. But now we're living in a different world, we all know that. And the arrival of digital media, for example, has really democratized that interaction between consumer and brand. So people can now access brands on their terms, where they want, when they want, in the ways they want, through the media they want. So narratives around your brands can quickly build without your beyond your control. You know, we've got social media, we've got peer reviews, we've got third-party critiques. Stories can happen without your control if you don't do anything about it. So that's the critical thing here I want to talk about. If you don't take control of your brand, everyone else will. It's really important that you bear that in mind. And that's the real success, the real critical element to successful brand marketing. You need to take control of your brand and meet consumers halfway as well, because they still do retain a significant degree of control over your brand. But we aren't helpless. There are ways to establish that control and to maintain that control. And that really leads me to maybe a more rounded definition for the purposes of this talk of what is a brand. And that is, in this situation, in this context, brand is the meaning given to a business, product or service by those who create it and those who experience it. There are two sides to the conversation, and that's really important. Brands are in constant motion today because of that dual direction, evolving, developing and shifting based on what they tell the world about them and what they show the world about themselves, but also what people interact and experience of them. So a brand relies on shared understanding, and that's what we should be attempting to create, and that's what we do here at Procter & Stevenson, try and get to that position of shared understanding between the creator of the brand and the experiencer of the brand. But the question is, how do you get there? Again, we could talk for weeks about this, but I think we've boiled it down for this session to three things: consistency, creativity, and collaboration. And successful brand marketing has to take into account all three. So let's start with the first one, consistency. When we talk about consistency in the world of branding, people immediately default to the consideration of logos, colours, font choice, typography, that sort of thing. And those visual signposts are critical. As a creative director, I couldn't stand up here and say they're not important. They're absolutely fundamental to the consistency of your brand. But there's more to it than that. And this is really touching on what Kevin started. Consistency in brand marketing means arriving at a brand essence, the brand salience that Kevin talked about, that truly represents the DNA or the soul of your brand. And now that essence isn't to be confused with your headline or your strapline or anything like that. It is a very boiled down statement of your essence, your soul, your DNA. It's something that your whole company can unite around, something that people identify around, and it can also provide a really valuable measuring stick in evaluating your ongoing brand marketing communications. You can always refer back to it. Does this communication reflect that essence? And there are loads and loads, I mean, Kevin touched on loads of great examples out there, but my favourite, it was introduced to us in a talk earlier this year by a guy called Grant LeBoeuf. My favourite essence and its extrapolation into the wider world is Disney. Now, Disney's brand essence is magical. That's all it is, magical. And the level of commitment to that brand essence within the company is quite staggering. So if you go to a Disney park, for example, first of all, obviously, staff members aren't staff members, they're cast members. So they're starting this whole magical performance. But equally, there are all the parades and everything happening all the time. You will never see a cast member dressed in costume walk from one place to another. That's because underneath Disney Park is a network of tunnels. So these guys can pop up as if by magic just next to you. That magic is never broken. Similarly, unlike Universal, for example, you rarely see the workings of the rides and the attractions at Disney. They hide that away, so that concept of magical is always there. And it goes right down to the litter bins. I mean, it's incredible. Right down to the litter bins. You'll never see anyone emptying a bin by hand at Disney either. Once you put the rubbish into the litter bins, which are already sort of worked into the design of the place, they're always part of the set. The rubbish is sucked from underneath and taken away, so you'd never see it. So that sort of conceit of magic is never broken. And that's the sort of level of commitment to brand essence that we should all be aiming for. And obviously, in the B2B world, it's not going to be so magical, it's not going to be so obvious perhaps, but that consistency is critical if you're going to be successful in your brand marketing. So all of those stories you create, all of those social posts, the content, even structure of your website, all of that needs to reflect that essence that you've got and you've defined as the heartbeat of your brand. So now, let's move on to creativity. So creativity, it's my stock in trade. In an almost deafening world of marketing noise, how do you cut through? How do you make yourself heard? How do you differentiate your brand? How do you stay relevant and engaging? Because remember, brands are evolving, customer needs are changing, interactions are differing all the time. In almost every instance, the answers will lie already in your business and the stories your business can tell. So Kevin and I and Sam and one or two others in this room, and I'm sure a lot of you as well, have worked on brand projects for businesses of all shapes and sizes around the world. And quite often, at the outset, things don't seem particularly inspiring or exciting or wonderful grounds for a fantastic brand. So we manufacture cables. These are the things that we've been presented with over the years, among many others. We manufacture cables. We make laptops. We provide contact center software. It's not, I mean, you might be asleep at this point just reading these, so let alone with that's working on them. But when you dig deeper into those businesses, you speak to the people behind these lines, you start to investigate the stories, you really start to find there's a much more exciting, vibrant scene to be explored. So those guys who manufacture cables, those guys are responsible for powering the energy transition, for example, around the world. They're the people who make sure that the roof on Centre Court can close, so fantastic sporting events can continue. They provide the connection between the Americas and Europe so that broadband can be connected. There's these incredible endeavours going on the basis of their cabling and therefore their brand. So there are some incredible stories to be told there. Those laptop people I mentioned, those laptop people were the manufacturers of the laptops that allowed all the first responders during the pandemic to be out there, not only saving lives, but also helping the world to get back on its feet once the pandemic was coming to an end, lockdown was ending. Incredible stories to be told there. And that contact center software business, they're actually champions of a movement which is going to combine humanity and AI in a way that people haven't necessarily seen before. And digging beneath the surface of that allowed us to create a brand narrative that, forgive me, I will read this out, but it's quite long, isn't it? But, so for businesses who want to meet customers wherever they are in our on-demand world, the solution lies with Trio's flexible, scalable, AI-powered CCaaS technology. Because with our help, every customer, no matter where they are, who they are, how or when they choose to reach out, will experience the service they're looking for. Our cloud-native software was built right from the start. It does away with decaying legacy systems and cobbled-together infrastructures, removes the need for multiple vendors, vanquishes the monster that creaks and groans and devours money when contact center tech needs an upgrade or update. So you get the idea. There's a wonderful story to be told about something that can seem really dry on the surface. And that's what we're always looking to do, to find those stories, to tell those stories, and to tie them back to that brand essence that we've identified. Going back to the laptop guys, it's Panasonic, so if you didn't recognise earlier, but Panasonic, we're helping them right now revisit one of their brands and do exactly what we're describing here, truly establishing a differentiated brand which is going to feed a wider marketing campaign, but first and foremost it's a brand-led campaign. The particular brand we've been working with is a brand called Toughbook. Now Toughbook is a type of rugged laptop. It's a laptop you can take into battlefields, into emergency situations, into fires. You can work outdoors in the dark, down mines, all of these incredible things. And it never fails. You can drop it, you can drop things on it, you can jump up and down on it, you can spill water on it. And it's an incredible piece of kit. Toughbook was the first of its kind. It was the first rugged computer in the world in the mid-90s, but other brands have cottoned on since. So there's this whole world of competition out there for Toughbook right now. And it does retain its place as market leader, but what Toughbook effectively is in now is an arms race of technical spec. That's where all the marketing has been competing. So we typically didn't. There's quite nice visuals, you know. This is the type of stuff that Toughbook does. You know, nice launch visuals. There's a lovely looking laptop. I'm saying this because we created all this, so I'm not going to be disparaging about the work that's on screen at the moment. But the fact is, when you start competing on these terms about the tech spec, you can always be beaten. Someone can always have a faster processor. Someone can always be cheaper. Someone's screen can always be brighter. So what we needed to do was to look for something that Toughbook could own, a territory that it could own, and a territory that really connected with the desires, the wants, the needs, the motivations of its customer base, and something that no one else could replicate. And so what we saw, this is putting our creative heads on, this is what we saw in terms of what could Toughbook own. It's got one critical advantage. It's called Toughbook. No one else is called Toughbook. Now Toughbook is synonymous with rugged computing. People use it in the same way as a sort of Hoover type situation. No one else can have that. No other brand can have that. No other manufacturing can have that. So what we've done is started to own the phrase tough again. I mean, it seems crazy that it's not there already, but it seems that it has been overlooked. So that took some courage on the part of the client, because we're asking them to step away from the comfort zone of talking about feeds and speeds and all of those sorts of things. And often in what you're just about to see, dispensing with the product altogether, really reflecting the user, the environment, and the emotional connection between the two. So this is the type of work that we started doing. We got this, all of the lines have got this construction of tough is. We started defining what tough is. Tough is, and importantly, that line can be representative of the user and the technology itself. So we don't have to show the tech. We use very epic photography in realistic situations. Toughbook users would recognise this as the types of place they work. So tough is setting the performance standard. Tough is being where you're needed most. Tough is staying strong in mission critical moments. You get the idea. This really epic photography, action, heroic user, and a line that we stay consistent in the construction of the line. Tough is something, and the actual meaning behind it is emotional, but also connects user and technology straight away all of the time. Lots and lots of expressions of this, and it came to this video in the end, so hopefully we will have sound here, otherwise I'll start humming a tune to make it sound better. So you get the idea of how epic we can make this by making that emotional connection on a brand level between the user and the technology. Not having to tell anyone about anything particular about the product. They start to make those positive mental associations, that brand recall that Kev talked about when decisions are being made. Toughbook will come will come top of mind when people are thinking rugged computing. So, moving on from creativity, the final pillar for this session, collaboration. So why does collaboration matter? Well, it's quite simple really. And you guys will know this, you're experienced people, every activity, every communication, everything, every time your brand reaches out or someone reaches out to your brand, that is part of your ongoing brand marketing. It has an impact on it. So everyone in your teams need to be on board to be ambassadors of that brand. At Proctor's, for example, we attempt to engender that sort of brand ambassadorship. You'll have noticed we've got the word yes written up the side of the building. Hopefully, yeah. So like that when you come in. there's a reason for that. It's not just a sort of cool design thing. Quite strange if it was. But the reason we've got yes written up the side of the building is because it echoes something that's framed and hung on the wall above Roger, our chairman's desk, in his office. And that says, say yes more than no. And that is an ethos, a philosophy that's run throughout the company since the day it was founded in 1979 by Roger. It's an ethos that's meant where we're always looking to be ambitious, entrepreneurial, innovative, courageous. We like to say a business without a comfort zone. It's led us into some strange territories in the past. I mean, Andrew, you mentioned Intimus, it wasn't an area of our expertise. We decided to explore it. But I mean, it's led us to the Middle East. It meant that from very humble start with Panasonic, we've become their largest global agency provider, for example. And it's something that every person who starts here, when I have an induction session with them, is the first thing I tell them about. Say yes more than no. That's what we're looking from everyone here. So we have it on the side of the building so no one can ever forget it. Excuse me. But we also believe in collaboration when we're helping our clients formulate their business strategy, their brand strategy. So when we're in that discovery phase and that development phase of a project, we look for input from across their business. We're not always just looking for input from the C-suite or even the marketing department. We tend to invite people from various different departments, different levels of the organisation to get a rounded picture, but also to give them a sense of ownership of the brand. The brand is theirs. And when they take ownership of the brand, they take responsibility for its success or otherwise. And then you've got a very powerful machine that's working behind the brand marketing that you're attempting to do. I said earlier I wanted to try and marry brand marketing with lead generation as well. That was on that first slide we saw. So I'll try and do that very quickly. Again, this is a huge subject, but hopefully it'll just give you a bit of a sort of an idea that it can be done and you can go away and explore it yourself. So how do you take all that brand consistency, creativity, collaboration, and turn it into an ongoing marketing campaign? And how do we make sure it reaches the right eyes and ears? Make sure you're talking to the people you want to be talking to about your brand. Well, one of many first ports of call, I suppose, is we always look to establish a very clear content strategy behind the brand. It's not just create a brand, send it out into the world and hope it does well. Because without this sort of content strategy, you're not going to get anywhere. You could do this a million different ways, but we would look at typically a 12-month positioning strategy for a brand when we're launching it. Break the year up into quarters, thematic quarters. So if I take Tough Book as an example, theme 1 might be about connectivity. Theme 2 might be about mobility. Theme 3 might be about ruggedization, whatever, And from there we get digital content, thought leadership content. We get series of social posts. I mean, it's LinkedIn, but it could easily be Instagram or Facebook. We get longer form editorial content. There'll be ongoing ad hoc work that feeds back into this whole theme about events that the client is going to and internal news from the business. If they've got some sort of CRM and opted-in database, we'll be emailing sequentially. We'll have email cadences going out. Equally, PPC should be part of your brand strategy as well. PPC is crucial. It's often seen as something separate and just a sort of direct response mechanism, but it's absolutely vital to brand awareness and brand marketing. And equally, optimization and expansion of your website. That needs to reflect all of this that's going on. And in that way, you can do that thing that I talked about early on, and that retain control of the stories that your brand is sharing with the world. You'll never have absolute control, but in this way, you give yourself the best possible chance. So you've got a great plan in place. You think you're going to communicate all the right messages about your brand on the right subjects, staying true to your brand essence, being creative and differentiated. You've got a lovely Procter & Stevenson brand video working well for you. But how can you be sure you're getting the right story to the right people? So there are literally tens of thousands of tools out there that you can do, but I'm just going to touch on one or two that might help. Okay. So the first is an intent platform. I don't know if any of you guys have used an intent platform at all. We're not there yet. An intent platform is basically an online tool that gives you the chance to identify those people, those businesses that are searching for the subject matter, the themes, the topics that you are interested in or that you have to promote. So we'll use Tough Book as an example. The Tough Book might want to know, right, who is looking for rugged computing right now? An intent platform, and as I say, there are many. There's Bombora, 6 Sense. I could go on. There's lots of them out there. They identify from the entire internet and social media those companies that are searching for the subject matter that you're interested in. And they actually identify spikes in interest, so you can start to track companies' interest. You can see where they are in the buying cycle. You can see how deep they're delving into the subject matter. And then you can then take these companies and match them to your ideal customer profile. So you start to build an audience of really well-matched people. These people are interested in what you're talking about, and they look like the people you want to be going after. So you start to build a really good prospect pool there. Once you've got that intent-based list, you can then move on to something like, of the many tools out there, good old-fashioned LinkedIn. Sales Navigator in LinkedIn allows you then to start building pools of individuals. So you could look at the companies that are interested, then start identifying the individuals in the appropriate job role, in the appropriate location, the appropriate sector, industry, and you can start running targeted brand advertising to those people, paid for media, into the feeds of those people. It looks like content that's going out from you. They get the impression that you've launched this gigantic campaign, when actually you're focusing your attention on the people you want to. It's brand level, so they get good awareness of the types of things that those positive associations that you want to be making with your customers, and they become very aware of you. At the same time, what we do, and Sophie and I, for example, Sophie, our new business person, is here, what we do is also then start automating connection requests and that sort of thing at the same time as the brand advertising is happening. So you're effectively doing direct outreach, lead generation, but it's under the cover of the brand awareness that you're doing. So it's not cold calling, LinkedIn connecting. I'm sure we all get far too many of those. Because the people have seen the content that you're sharing and understand the value that you have to offer, we take away the coldness of the outreach. And so people can make a choice based on what they know of you already. So it's brand awareness leading to lead generation. And what we actually do find as well is that typically when you do a piece of lead generation, a piece of direct outreach marketing, sales activation, whatever you want to call it, you typically sort of train your sights at the top of the company. MD, maybe C-suite perhaps, maybe marketing-ish people, depends what you guys do. But that's where you go. So you give yourself a very narrow window of possible success and a huge window of possible failure. That's not very many people to be aiming at, because those two people will probably not connect with you, not take up your offer. So what we typically do is broaden the scope in our lead generation and look more laterally around the organisation at sort of contributing positions, roles, influencers. So as Kevin said, decisions are made by committee. Let's think about who's on those committees or who's influencing those committees. And by doing that, you give yourself many, many, many more times chance of success. And what we often find as well is that when we go down to, we connect with someone in middle management, for example, send them a message, offer them a piece of content, something they might be interested in, we get a referral. They'll say, I'm not actually the person who you need to contact about this. The person in our business who deals with that sort of thing is, and then we get a direct referral. So it can be really successful. Of course, this is just one. There are absolutely countless tools like this out there. I mean, LinkedIn is one in, but there are many, many lead generation tools. This is just one of the ways that we tend to harness things as well. Intent platform, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. There are other things that can identify, for example, the people who follow your competitors on social media and who your competitors follow on social media. You can get the lists of those companies from using these tools. So there's lots of ways to do it, but it's always important, bearing in mind everything that Kevin said about the 60-40 split of your marketing spend, that you do the hard work with your brand before jumping into the attempt to do any sort of direct sales activation. You need to have that warmness at the top before you can do the sharp end at the bottom. So that's me. I've gone on quite a while there, but I just want to summarise what I've covered in the last sort of 15 or 20 minutes. First of all, if you don't take control of your brand, everyone else will. People can do that, so you be in charge. You be masters of your brand destiny. That's really important, because brand is the meaning given to a business, product or service by those who create it and those who experience it. It's a two-way street. Make sure the direction of travel is correct. And to create shared understanding of your brand, you need three things. You need consistency, creativity, and collaboration. And once we all have all of that in place, we can then move on to making that connection with lead generation, because critically, as we've just seen hopefully, brand marketing and lead generation aren't adversaries, despite having some boxing gloves up at the start there. The actual truth of the matter is they're inseparable, invaluable partners. Thanks everyone.